All right, welcome one and all to Hornet Debate's public debate. Woo! All right, I am so excited for this evening's event. We have so many cool things to show you all. This team has been working so hard this season on speeches, on debates. We've been doing really, really well. So let's give it up for the team and all of the hard work that they've put in. To introduce myself real quickly, my name is Vita Dean. I'm the graduate assistant coach. This is my first semester, and it has been incredible to work with this team. They've been working so incredibly hard. How many of you, just a show of hands, have seen a debate before? How many have not seen a debate before? I'm a communication major, so I can't count that high, but that's more than two. So, debate, for those who haven't seen it before, debate's an art that we practice very, very hard at. There are many different styles of debates that we do on this team, and today you will be seeing a team-style debate, and it's going to be very, very exciting. Yes, it is an art. We are good at it, actually. We have sustained top 10 in the nation at the National Forensics Association tournament. Here's our team. We're awesome.
It's true.
But we don't just do debate. No. We do speeches, performances, poetry, anything that you can think of. So, before we get into our debate, we're going to see two incredible award-winning speeches by two of our incredible teammates. We're going to see a persuasive speech by Gina Vellucci. This speech has won a championship here at Sac State at our tournament, and we are so excited to show you guys. So, Gina.
Imagine, you're watching your child walk out of class one moment, only to collapse in the school hallway the next. Teachers and staff surround her, but instead of acting quickly, they hesitate. Minutes pass. No CPR, no defibrillator. By the time emergency responders arrive, your child's heartbeat is gone. According to Raleigh News Observer, this isn't a scene from a movie. This is what happened to 16-year-old Kalia Jones at her Virginia high school. Not one trained staff member stepped in promptly. Now, let's say you're in a CPR certification course. The instructor brings out the training mannequins. You practice breathing, compression, and rescue procedures on this one standard model. You pass the course. You're certified. You're ready to save a life. But here's the problem. People don't look like that dummy. Real bodies are diverse. Some bodies are bigger, some are smaller, some have breasts, some have implants, some have a broad chest full of muscle, or a more frail build. What if the person has a disability? CPR training tools do not reflect that diversity. If someone collapses in front of you, it's more likely than not, they'll look nothing like that dummy. We must reconsider. CPR mannequins, as they are now, are not inclusive of all body types. Change is urgently needed. It's a matter of life and death. First, I'll discuss the historical development and use of CPR mannequins. Then I'll talk about why change is needed, and finally, what we can do to help. Let's begin with a little history. CPR mannequins were designed decades ago, based on a simple one-size-fits-all body. According to the American Heart Association, in 2026, CPR as we know it today began in 1960 with the introduction of the first CPR mannequins. However, the diversity of CPR mannequins has not evolved nearly as much as their longevity might suggest. In 2023, the National Library of Medicine states that if a rescuer doesn't know how to adjust their hand placement, it can cost a person their life. Now that we know why or how CPR mannequins have been historically, let's discuss why change is needed. Now, this isn't a matter of fairness or equality. It's a matter of outcomes. A 2025 report by The Guardian found that when cardiac arrest happens in public, men are more likely than women to receive life-saving CPR from a bystander. Why? Bystanders are unsure of how to navigate compressions on a woman's chest because they've never practiced on a realistic female mannequin. Now, this is also the case for individuals with larger bodies or unique chest shapes. In 2023, the American College of Cardiology states that if a rescuer doesn't know how to adjust their hand placement, it can cost a person their life. The lack of inclusive mannequins reinforces hesitation, and hesitation reduces survival rates. The American Red Cross in 2022, we know that brain damage can occur in as little as 4 minutes without oxygen. And if the training doesn't prepare us for real life bodies, real lives will be lost. CPR training is designed to prepare people to save lives, but our tools, is designed to prepare people to save lives. But if our tools used to teach are ignoring significant portions of the population, then the system is failing those people. By not representing diverse bodies, we're implicitly saying that only some lives are worth preparing for. Inclusivity in CPR mannequins isn't just a matter of representation. It's a matter of equity, safety, and justice. Now that we know why change is needed, let's discuss what can be done. Everyone, regardless of gender, size, age, or ability, deserves the same chance at survival. By making CPR training inclusive, we aren't just changing dummies, we're changing attitudes. And society has a responsibility to reduce the stigma of having a body that is different. Awareness is only the first step. Real change happens when we reimagine what saving a life looks like for every body. So, what would inclusive training look like? First, body diversity, making mannequins that represent people of different sizes and different ages. Next, gender representation, making mannequins with realistic breast tissue so trainees can practice proper hand placement without discomfort. Then, accessibility considerations, making mannequins that represent people with disabilities or medical devices such as a feeding tube or a colostomy bag would better help prepare rescuers for real-life challenges. And finally, cultural representation. Making mannequins with different skin tones represents a diverse population. It's a simple change that would give visibility to inclusivity. Now, what can we do? Well, all of us can help in different ways. If you've not yet taken a CPR course, take one, get certified. You can use Google to find an inclusive training that anyone can benefit from. If you've already taken a CPR course, consider your training. Was it inclusive? Do you feel confident reacting to any body type in an emergency? If you're taking a CPR course, ask questions. Inquire about differences in hand placement or what you can do in different situations. As a society, we have a responsibility to invest in innovation that values every body, not just the standardized one. Today, I have discussed how CPR mannequins have been historically, why change is needed, and what we can do to support that change. CPR is about saving lives, but our tools are only preparing us to save some lives. Inclusivity in CPR mannequins isn't just a matter of representation. It's a matter of survival. The next time someone's heart stops beating, we shouldn't stop and wonder if our training applies to their body. We should be ready because every life is worth saving. About 9 minutes have passed since I started this speech. And as we return to that devastating moment where Kalia Jones lay waiting for someone to act, 9 minutes passed before CPR was attempted. And by then, it was too late. Her story proves that knowing what to do isn't enough. What matters is doing it. It's time that we breathe life into inclusivity and demand that CPR mannequins reflect the diversity of the world that we live in.
That we're going to see is also an incredibly special performance. This is something that both of these performances were brought to the national tournament in Tennessee just 2 weeks ago. That's crazy that it was already 2 weeks ago. And this was our first program in oral interpretation that has broken at nationals, making Sac State history. So please welcome up Megan Weiner.
Before I begin, I would just like to give a brief content warning. There are some pretty heavy themes in this speech, including a shooting, so if you feel uncomfortable at any time, feel free to leave the room. Did I do enough? Could I have just stayed a little bit longer? Are we going? Okay. Well, I remember walking into the kitchen and hearing the clink of his spoon on his coffee mug. He always stirred it twice. Even if he didn't add anything, just stir, stir. Habit. Ordinary life. I used to believe that grief would come like a thunderstorm, but it came in quiet rooms. Empty chairs. Coffee, never stirred. And for a long time, I thought that I could bring him back if I kept his shoes, if I didn't give away his books, if I went over that night again and again in my mind. Did I do enough? Could I have just stayed a little bit longer? I could undo it. Make it unhappen. That's the thing about magical thinking. You know, it tells you that grief is a puzzle, and if you solve it right, they'll come back. Did I do enough? Could I have just stayed a little bit longer? Did I do enough? Could I have just stayed a little bit longer? Did I do enough? Could I have just stayed a little bit longer? Still, I woke up the next morning. I'm still breathing. I'm still here. I am left standing. But I will never be the same. Survivors of deadly tragedies seemingly come out unscathed. They escape the crash. They beat the illness. They weren't the ones shot when the gun went off. But survivor's guilt, the belief that your life comes at someone else's expense, is often hidden beneath the surface. According to a UK stress clinic, over 90% of survivors of deadly tragedies experience survivor's guilt. And yet, according to a 2020 study conducted by the National Institute of Health, confirms that, quote, there have been no psychological investigations into treatment for survivor's guilt, end quote. So these survivors are left completely misunderstood, unseen, and neglected. Today, we will explore that guilt through Becca's Heartbreak and Rabbit Hole by David Lindsay-Abaire, Cancer Guilt by Jennifer Nond, Death is Out of Our Hands by Barbara Morris, and 24 Bullets by Caden Harris. Why Wasn't It Me? A program about the ones who live and the guilt that haunts them. Psst! Jamie! Are you awake? Guess what? Today's Jello is lime. Again. Do you think that they're trying to kill us with green food dye? You want mine? I'll give you mine if you give me the Nurse Daily Shoe Report. Crocs with socks again? Oh, that's bad. That's really bad. You know, Jamie, I know that I've never seen your face because of this stupid curtain between us, but somehow you're my best friend. You know, you make me feel like me. You make me forget that I'm sick. So when this is over and our hair grows back, we're both doing purple, right? Okay. Well, I gotta go. Treatment round 3. I'll see you later. Shh! Shh! 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Okay, we just gotta be really, really quiet. We've just gotta be really, really quiet, okay? Don't let your shoes squeak, okay? Because if you do, he's gonna hear us, so we've just gotta be really, really quiet, okay? Oh my God! Oh my God, she's not breathing! She's not breathing, I can't help her! I should drag her, I should do something, I can't because then he'll hear me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm leaving you here. Do you know what it feels like to wake up and wish you hadn't? I watched my best friend die with my name on his lips, and he looked at me like I could do something. Anything, and I couldn't. So I just held him, while everything inside of him poured into my hands. And when it was over, I stood up. I looked around and I realized that every single one of them was dead. And I was the only one left standing. Do you really not know me, Howie? Do you really think that I am trying to erase him? I see him every second of every day, okay? Tate was an accident. And I will beat myself up about it forever because it feels like I don't feel bad enough for you. Like my grief isn't loud enough, but it is just as real. And it is just as awful as yours is. Jamie, are you awake? Guess what? Today's Jello is lime. Again. Do you think that they bought a warehouse full of it? I'm starting to think so. You want mine? Yeah, I didn't think so. You know, Jamie, everybody in here treats me like I'm glass. Like I'm fragile. But with you, it's different. You make this hell somehow survivable. Jamie! Jamie, don't fall asleep on me yet. Jamie? Nurse! We light candles! We post from homeroom. Prayers are not going to stop the nightmares when you're back under that desk, counting your own breaths, wondering if it's going to be your last. And then life keeps going. The hallways, they'll fill again. School bell will ring again. But nothing is normal. How is survival supposed to feel like a victory when it's bitter? When it's stolen? Officer? She was just right next to me. We were in the hallway, and then we were laughing, and then it was screaming, and then it was bang, and now she's on the floor. I'm sorry. I just need a second. I'm sorry. She's still in there. She's still in there, and her eyes are open, and I can't even do anything for her. Please. Just take me instead, okay? She had dreams. She was gonna sing after graduation, okay? I don't even know what I'm doing with my life. She deserved more. She deserved so much more than this. I wish I had died there. I wish I had gone with them. At least then this pain in my heart would have ended. At least then I wouldn't have to spend my days carrying their ghosts like chains around my neck. I don't know why I survived, but it wasn't because I deserved to.
Myself. Want to be a part of this? Here's how to join the team. Enroll in comms 111 or 110, and you can be a part of this awesomeness. Yay! Okay, so we have QR code as well in proper persuasion fashion. So, without further ado, we are going to welcome our debaters up here. So, we are debating the resolution here about housing policy in California. And that is that state-level affordable housing mandates will directly improve homelessness rates in California. And that is our resolution that we are going to be debating. On the affirmative, we are going to have Tatiana. Second speaker for affirmative is Aaliyah. And for our final speaker on affirmative is going to be Andrew. Next, we'll be introducing the negative side. And that is going to be, Bruce, are you there? Bruce! Maribel! And last but not least, Vincent! This is going to be an extremely exciting debate. This is a tag team style debate, so there'll be a lot of crossfire, and they're going to ask each other questions. So without further ado, let's get debating.
Good evening, everyone. I will be convincing you that state-level affordable housing construction mandates will directly improve homelessness in California. To give some background, there are 187,000 unhoused people in California, which makes up 24% of the unhoused population in the country. Housing is unaffordable for millions of Californians. The housing insecurity and instability that results from the lack of housing affordability impacts people and communities in countless ways. Now, let's start with some terminology so that you can better understand the topic. State-level housing is affordable housing for lower-income households and is defined in state law as not more than 30% of gross household income. In regard to mandates, to address the risk of converting at-risk units to market rate, the state began to adopt the Affordable Housing Preservation Laws starting in 1987. In 2017, affordable housing preservation laws were expanded and enhanced, giving HCD enforcement authority to monitor compliance and ensure the law prioritizes the sale of affordable housing developments to entities that will maintain the long-term affordability. So, to begin, let's go into my first contention, that housing first works. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, Housing First is a homeless assistance program that assists in attaining permanent housing. This approach does not require people to address all of their problems before receiving housing, meaning services do not need to be attained to acquire aid. This program has been especially helpful in addressing chronic homelessness. The Congress website as of 2015 defines chronic homelessness as individuals who spend long periods of time in living on the street or other places not meant for human habitation, and who have one or more disabilities, frequently including mental illnesses and substance use disorders. Historically, the strategy to address this particular group of individuals was a linear approach that involved interim requirements to achieve housing, such as being abstinent from drugs and alcohol. The reason why this has hindered getting people off of the streets is because housing should be seen as a human right, not a commodity. The National Alliance to End Homelessness in 2023 says, "We followed the evidence that showed that even for people with the most complex service needs, more than 80% were still housed after a year when assisted with a housing first approach. This shift provided real impact. From 2007 to 2016, the total number of people experiencing homelessness decreased by 15%, with even more astounding results when looking at specific subpopulations. From 2010 to 2016, family homelessness decreased by 23%, veteran homelessness decreased by 47%, and chronic homelessness decreased by 27%. Now let's go on to my second contention, that homelessness is a bad structure. People often view homelessness as a result of personal failure or irresponsibility, but homelessness is driven by unaffordable housing and economic hardship. Common misconceptions about the root causes of homelessness continue to impact our ability to solve it at scale, according to Health Affairs of 2024. There is a correlation between mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness, but it is likely the lack of resources that exacerbates these conditions. According to human rights research of 2024, besides countless other barriers that homeless people experience, the root cause of it all is the commonality of being without a home. One solution to this is the first housing model. This approach believes that people should have secure housing regardless of if they currently have a job or have substance abuse issues. Housing First programs also offer social services, but participation or meeting minimum behavioral requirements are not necessary to keep one's housing. This means that people have the safety of not only always having somewhere to sleep at night, but a private space to call their own, which is not often available through standard shelters. So now that we've talked about why homelessness is bad, let's talk about my third contention, that mandates are good. There have been multiple laws passed in the last 5 years that attempt to address the lack of affordable housing in California on a state level. According to a February 2025 Cal Matters article by Ben Christopher, the shortfalls of current state-level housing policy boil down to three main issues. These are labor requirements, haphazard affordability mandates, and NIMBYism on the local level. There's also a bigger picture, including Trump-era tariffs that make any kind of construction difficult. Among all of the recent attempts to increase housing development, one stands out from the rest. In 2023, the state of California permitted over 28,000 accessory dwelling units, According to that Cal Matters article, this is a direct result of the no-strings-attached approach to this development, which oversteps many of the issues we have discussed. Furthermore, the legislation underlying accessory dwelling units is now almost 10 years old, which highlights the importance of being patient with new legislation and revising rather than reversing it. Thank you.
On your first contention, how exactly are you resolving issues like NIMBYism?
The first contention is mostly just concerned with getting the unhoused off of the streets.
The third contention.
Oh, I'm sorry. The third contention about mandates being good.
Yeah.
The first step to address that is to enforce mandates.
Okay.
Testing, sorry. Hello. Can you give us just explain further how the housing first policy helps more housing to be built and helps people get off the streets?
Well, the more unhoused we get off of the streets, the more houses we'll need to build.
No, the housing first policy, how does that directly help this issue? Can you just explain that more?
Yeah, so Housing First is the approach of literally just giving housing to the homeless without requiring anything from them. So it's like the first step in rehabilitation that's needed.
Would you say that the Housing First initiative has been adopted in the city of California?
I'll actually hand this over to Aaliyah here.
Yeah, we said that Housing First has been enacted in a number of places, and I'm pretty sure it's been enacted in California, and the regions in which it's been enacted in have shown significant success
Right.
in reducing levels of homelessness.
Okay. Have we seen across the state any reduced levels of homelessness, given that this was issued statewide in 2016 under Senate Bill 3080?
Yeah, we say that it's been successful in reducing at least 88% of homelessness, and we will bring that up in our acceptance speech.
Is it on? Okay. Hello everyone. Today, thank you so much for making it here today. And we are gathered here today to talk about the problem of homelessness in California. These homeless are real people, and it is a crisis that is visible in almost every community across the state. So when you hear something like we need more affordable housing mandates, it sounds like the right thing to do. But today I want to challenge that as the negative and say that affordable home mandates actually makes the problem worse. And I'll break this down with my two contentions. One, which is mandated affordable housing does not actually create more affordability. But also my second contention, which is affordable housing does not help the root cause of homelessness. So that brings me to my first contention, which is Mandated affordable housing does not actually create more affordability. To support this argument, I have two subpoints. Firstly, price trade-offs, and lastly, litigation. So on to my first subpoint, price trade-offs. According to Cal Matters, inclusionary housing requirements make projects less affordable for developers. And when projects become less affordable for these developers, fewer units get built, and that leads to higher prices and higher rents overall. So it's basically like making construction harder and more expensive for builders, then wondering why fewer buildings go up. Even if these developers were to get building profitable housing projects, that don't face any issues, and they don't face any issues with costs. They face another issue, which is my second subpoint, litigation. The Pacific Research Institute explains that under California environmental law, almost anyone can file a lawsuit against housing projects, which is called CEQA. These cases can drag on for years, and it's basically like trying to build a house, and then while people keep filing complaints, that forces you to stop every single time you lay brick. As they say in the third contention, people fight back against these affordable housing projects, making development impossible. So now that I talked about my first contention, which is affordable housing doesn't actually create affordability, let's move on to my second contention, which is affordable housing is mitigative and does not help the root problem. I'm going to prove this through my three subpoints, which is the root issues still persist. Secondly, zoning is exclusionary, and lastly, it actually creates more homelessness. On to my first point, even if the number of affordable housing increases, it does not address the mental issue and addiction crisis. The National Library of Medicine finds that almost more than half of homeless individuals has experienced traumatic brain injuries, along with higher rates of depression and substance abuse. So that's giving someone housing without addressing mental health or addiction is like giving someone crutches but not treating the broken leg. So simply giving someone access to a cheaper apartment does not address the underlying issues that led to the homelessness in the first place. So even if they were to receive housing, it can create stability, but it doesn't guarantee people actually receive treatment or recover. The affirmative assumes this. And now that I've shown how the issue persists, I'll move on to my second subpoint, which is affordable housing creates exclusion. Catherine Einstein explains that local communities have significant control over access to affordable housing, which meaning it's like handing out life jackets, but that only fits certain people. But because the people who need it the most often can't use them and excludes them. Finally, I'll talk about my last subpoint, which is the system reproduces homelessness. Affordable housing is not actually accessible, and according to Academicum 2025, these houses still require certain income levels, credit checks, and eligibility standards, which means that people who are currently unhoused frequently don't qualify. This is clear with the data by the Cicero.
So the first question we wanted to ask was, how do we address the mental and addiction health crisis without first getting the unhoused people off of the street?
That's a great question. And we want to treat the symptoms, help mitigate against the root causes like substance abuse and mental health.
But how would we do that without first getting people out of the streets where they're subject to mental health issues and addiction is all around them?
You housing can help, but we need to address that, and specifically, I think, might you help me?
We can help, yes. So, main reason, right, we shouldn't be, right, starting these, especially this policy of, right, housing first, is right, because the housing first policy directly ignores the substance issues. We are saying, regardless of your substance issues or economic situation, you should get housing, but by doing that, we are inherently ignoring the problem of substance abuse in California through these mandates and through these policies. And so it actually contradicts, right, trying to address the substance abuse problem, especially something like housing first mandates.
Oh, okay, so first, in response to that, we say that core to housing first is tackling substance abuse and mental illness. But on to the next question, we'll ask, are SECA lawsuits unique to like affordable housing development projects, or just like, do they happen with anything that's development related and affects the environment?
Mandates.
That's time.
They're unique to mandates. SECA is unique to mandates only.
SEQA.
That's time.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you all for coming today. Does this work?
Was projected well.
Is it working? Okay. Okay, thank you all for coming today. We stand in affirmation of the resolution, and I will be responding to some of what the negation said today. So first, the negative says that Housing First is unsuccessful, but referring to contention 1, Housing First has a direct positive impact. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, evidence from a systemic review of 26 studies indicates that Housing First programs decreased homelessness by 88% and improved housing stability. The negative says that litigation and NIMBYism get in the way, but refer to contention 3 and then no strings attached approach, which oversteps these exact issues. State laws were passed to remove these barriers that prevent projects. The lawsuits that they are referring to are part of SECA, which is not unique to affordable housing projects specifically, but a litany of things. So lawsuits happen anyway. So also according to Loeb and Loeb, as of 2026, Newsom successfully secured the legislature's enactment of major reforms to SECA through the budget process. These laws will likely go a long way toward creating the conditions for more affordable housing production in California. So even if this were true, people may engage in these lawsuits, which may impact the potential, but that does not directly negate the fact that something is still better than nothing. According to the Tenor Center for Housing and Innovation in 2025, we passed bills that are incentives for developers to produce more low-income houses, like eliminating new parking requirements, delaying fees for construction, leading to higher interest costs. The builder's remedy is a provision where developers reserve 20% of housing for low income, which directly disproves the fact that housing gets concentrated in one area. An approach to the housing crisis that works includes these mandates. Uses to answer their argument that mandates are unfeasible. They happen anyway. We also say that prices going up elsewhere is not the main concern. If developers need to do that to fund affordable housing projects, then let it happen, because in the long term, it's worth it. Along with the added fees, resources should be allocated for these developers, and using that as a reason as to why mandates are bad is a non-argument. We also say that the housing crisis itself is more expensive. Emergency services, policing, and healthcare cost far more than housing. But also, in the long run, affordable housing helps the economy significantly, mobilizing more people to go to work who originally did not have a place of residence, which has positive effects on the housing market in the long term. They say affordable housing doesn't address the root cause of homelessness, like mental illness and substance abuse, but Contention 1 answers this directly, saying that the Housing First model is a well-documented perspective of homelessness research that argues that the underlying driver behind the housing crisis is not primarily mental health, substance abuse, or individual failures, but rather it is literally the affordability and availability of housing. This goes completely unresponded to and negated in cross-ex, saying that Housing First doesn't address this when it does. The only way to effectively address homelessness is by increasing housing. You can't treat someone's mental health if they're living on the street, and housing is the only foundation for recovery. They say the crisis also still persists with affordable housing in the status quo. Yes, because we need more affordable housing, but we have shown that current efforts have improved previous rates and more housing would be better. Refer to Contention 3, which said that it is extremely important to be patient with new legislation to wait for it to work, rather than reversing it. Also refer to the fact that Housing First has been shown to increase, improve rates by at least 88%. Additionally, on their first point, they said themselves that, sorry, they didn't read that. Okay, so this answers the argument that affordable housing reinforces harm in our society. This isn't true. Our statistics directly negate that that's not true. They say affordable housing doesn't solve everything. We say that this is a non-argument. The resolution is about if mandates improve the housing crisis in the status quo, not preventing any possible scenario leading to someone being unhoused. It's literally impossible to solve for every single scenario that leads to someone being unhoused. But we can solve, we can help mental illness and substance abuse. It's about doing everything in our power, and even if it doesn't solve all of the problem, it's like a broken leg. Yes, we aren't treating the broken leg directly, but they still need crutches to jumpstart their recovery. Yeah. I should How long is process?
2 minutes, right? Okay, you could say that you cut all your evidence genuinely, right, without any intent to misinform.
Yeah.
So can you explain which part of your evidence highlights, in your third contention, that this no-strings-attached approach actually created housing in a way that oversteps the barriers such as NIMBYism that we highlighted, and you also highlighted in your third contention?
Yeah, we're actually saying through that source specifically that the no strings attached has removed specific barriers that causes housing. We quoted it in our contention. We say that the article itself that we read and used the evidence from said that.
Really quickly, the SB, basically the California state bill that mandated first use policy was passed over a decade ago. Have we seen substantial increases specifically in California, or reduction specifically in California of the homeless population?
In areas where housing first programs were implemented.
Okay, really quickly, in that systematic review of 26 studies, it says decreased homelessness by 88%, but it directly said after that, compared to treatment first programs. So does housing first policies actually just decrease homelessness, or is it just compared to another way of treating homelessness, stopping homelessness?
We're saying that the evidence that we use refers to housing first directly decreasing the rates of homelessness, not comparatively to other services. This is this is directly related to general rates of homelessness.
Oh. Sorry, you good?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Sorry, you said that there was no correlation between the prices of housing increasing elsewhere and impacting affordable housing markets. How does that not relate, given that housing prices going up makes housing less affordable?
Okay, so Okay, we say that like even if that were true, that like it's also just a non-argument because the question isn't about whether like people who already have homes can afford like rent increases. Like we're talking about like if we should get homeless people off the street or not, and we say long term. So yeah, okay, like let's say that my response wasn't true. We say that it's still a non-argument. Oh, that's it.
Okay, that's it.
Do you need a time?
No, I need to get her back though. Sounds of there's gonna be one more person.
Hi, and welcome, and thank you for coming out again to hear our speeches and to hear our debate about this crisis. Because as we know, the crisis in California has only gotten worse and worse. A 2025 systematic review by Stanford University states that over the last decade, from 2016 to 2026, the amount of homelessness in California has risen by around 30 to 40,000 people. That is a sizable number of people that we can no longer, as a society, house properly. And we as a negation state that these mandates, these affordable housing mandates, are actually the main driver of the fact of house prices going up, less people being able to afford rent, and that it overall exacerbates and worsens the problem. But first, let's go on to some of the affirmative claims. So, first of all, I would like to address this affirmative claim on 88% improved homelessness via housing first programs. Now, that statistic was unfortunately dubiously cited. That is only compared to treatment first programs. That is not actually talking about homelessness rates overall decreasing 88%. And I think we can just gut check this logically speaking, given the fact that in 2016, California, under law, implemented statewide a housing first program. And housing first programs across its housing development projects, and that the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis has only gotten worse. You can just logically see that no, it doesn't reduce homelessness by 88% given we've had 30 to 40,000 more homeless since 2016. But let's go on to the real crux of the problem and what these mandates actually cost. Now the main problem is NIMBY. So what is NIMBY? Not in my backyard. These affordable housing mandates on everything new being built makes it so that more affluent neighborhoods through CEQA or through other laws, right, don't want housing or affordable housing to be built near them. This leads to and exacerbates the cycle of homelessness in which all of the affordable housing is clustered around one area, in which the economic situation where affordable housing is clustered under one area is significantly worse, right? And it makes it even harder to even afford that affordable housing because the job situation where clusters of affordable housing are is significantly worse, right? These affordable housing mandates, which force new properties to have, right, set limit for affordable housing, is just leading to less buildings being built. And let's go on to what my opponent said about house pricing not matter. House pricing does matter. Yes, most of the time these affordable housing mandates are for the people who can't afford to buy houses, for those who are renting, generally. However, the pricing of the house market directly impacts those who rent and those who buy actual houses. If houses are more expensive to buy, more people will rent. And if more people rent, it's less affordable to rent or to be in an affordable housing. So this makes it so that the only affordable housing, especially for those trying to get out of the cycle of poverty, out of the cycle of homelessness, is the ones mandated by the government, which clearly aren't enough. That 30% threshold as the high point is clearly not enough for new housing. The market itself will solve for affordable housing given that there is a significant demand for more housing. But the problem is the supply is being slowed down by the fact that no one wants new apartments built where they live, given that a portion of it has to be affordable housing. And so we as a negation are saying that you're not just giving someone crutches who has a broken leg. No, you're beating their broken leg and then tossing the crutches at them and saying to fix it. But that doesn't help at all. We've seen that empirically, over the last decade, the problem in California has gotten worse and worse. And we can see the Housing First policy, which started in 2016, started when we had 30 to 40,000 less homeless, has not solved a thing. And so the only solution is to stop having these mandates. Even if you subsidize them, they don't work. They just seek to reduce to build housing, reduce to build apartments, and increase the cycle of poverty that keeps people homeless, that keeps people down. And that's what we're going to say today, and that's why you're going to be voting negative. Thank you.
Okay, so why does it matter that we're like comparing it to like treatment first?
Right, it
If
matters.
we show that like housing first is more successful than like previous initiatives in the past.
More
like, why does that
successful-
distinction matter so much?
That distinction matters because more successful does not mean good, right? Something failing and you failing worse. You getting a 30% on exam.
But it's been
being better
proven to
than-
be like successful.
Being more successful than another failing program is not a measure for being a good program.
Would you say 88% is not a lot?
Compared to, right, we say that's not a lot compared to a treatment first program, which isn't successful either, right? We're saying, right, if you got a 30% in an exam and you say double the score of someone that got 15%, you are not succeeding. And we've seen empirically that California, through a housing first program, has not succeeded. Through these mandates, has not succeeded.
Okay. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I think the bigger question here should really be, you're making a connection that since these, like Housing First was implemented in 2016, 10 years ago, that the housing crisis and homelessness has gotten worse.
Yes.
How can you make that type of connection with no evidence to back it when we've had a change in presidency that is continuously made terrible economic decisions? Our economy has crashed across the board in the last 10 years. We've been going downhill. How is there a connection between this policy and saying that it's the root cause of why homelessness is getting worse?
Well, there's a connection with it, and it's California specific because this trend hasn't fluctuated with the difference in presidency. And you can argue that there are other causes for the homelessness getting worse, but we're going to say that specifically the Housing First policy, and specifically we cited from the Stanford study in 2025, has led to this increase in homelessness. In fact, from 2009 to 2016, in the 7 years before that, homelessness actually
Okay, I have one more question. There have been bills passed in 2025 that allow developers to bypass local zoning laws as long as they develop with 20% affordable housing.
Yeah, the problem is that no one's going to build new things because there are still other ways to get it so that affordable housing and housing in general can be blocked. That's what our entirety of our point is saying.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what we're saying this time.
Albert Einstein, oh, sorry. Albert Einstein once said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Here's the crux of the problem. We have been doing this for over a decade. This Housing First initiative that they're referring to was a statewide program in California. And you want to know what happened? We read you evidence that said that California's homelessness has raised 50%, not in 10 years, but in recent years. So that brings me back to the original question. Is this working? Now, I tell you that they came here in bad faith because they read this evidence that cites specifically that the Housing First initiative produces 88% less homelessness. As my partner, Bruce, highlighted, he went into the evidence that they were cut, and it said explicitly that this is in reference to the Treatment First program. Now, to tell you a little bit about that, it is a program that did not require sobriety or any type of participation in mental health or social services. This meant that this was a also failed program that was qualitatively inferior. This is not a good measure for how successful these projects are. So again, I refer you to what they have yet to respond to. We tell you first to clarify that they are not funding this on the state level. What happens is the state allows developers to come in and then create homelessness projects. Now, who are these developers? They are real estate agents, people who spit on the last person they talked to that wasn't 7 figures and own 10 penthouses. And these are individuals who frankly don't care about the little guy. Now, I tell you that if we are to reify and create a better system, it is most certainly not through the rich. This is classic Reaganomic trickle theory and does not have any real substantive weight in the real world. If we are to embolden rich communities, which I'll get into a little bit later, and create an inequity between those who are underprivileged and those who are overprivileged, what happens is that wealth stays contained within richer communities and does nothing to help, at the very least, and nourish those who are in need. Now, I refer you again to the arguments we presented that they've yet to respond to. We told you through our second contention that these zoning, or specifically these affordable housing projects, are negotiated by communities. These are communities that are already housed, and communities who under CEQA are allowed to sue these projects into the ground. Now, here's the problem. These communities negotiate the prices. These communities negotiate the requirements. So what happens is, in the end, affordable housing actually creates greater segregation by making it to where homeless individuals are unable to qualify for the very thing that grants them these homeless projects in the first place. And because there is no real evidence read on the affirmative that can actually answer how it is they are enforcing this, we tell you again that this makes the problem worse. Now, here is what they are going to do. They're going to come up and they're going to tell you that even if they don't solve all the problems, they're going to have, at the very least, some homeless individuals. We tell you no. The increased prices, which was our first contention, that's produced as a result of increased production costs, actually makes it harder for homeless individuals to get access or even just put their foot in the door to, at the very least, get the necessary materials to be homed, because of the fact that this stays within rich communities and the prices are jacked up as a result of lower supply. It is simple supply and demand theory. They're also going to tell you that these affordable housing projects have helped, or at least decrease homelessness in these sub-areas. But again, we tell you that this was done on a statewide level and did not resolve any of the issues, especially structural, that we referred to. And also, they haven't exactly explained how that evidence actually says what it says, and I asked about it specifically as well. So regardless, it doesn't matter. Now, here's what I want you to take away from this. What they want you to assume is that the big guy, the guy in suits, who doesn't care about us, will come down and help endow those in need. Now, to tell you, if you believe that, you are lacking in life experience. And that's crazy for me to say because I'm 19 years old. The truth is that the rich do not care. And affordable housing is only a way for the rich to stay rich.
All right, thank you guys for staying with us so far. Really appreciate it. I know we're dragging on a little bit, but we're at the end. So, we affirm that affordable housing construction mandates in California will directly improve homelessness. We have proved this through Housing First being a productive and successful program in getting homeless people a roof over their heads, which we will touch on despite them trying to skew that fact. By doing that, they are then able to receive aid programs that improve mental health, drug rehabilitation, and more. This has shown that time and time again, it works tremendously, especially with the chronic homeless population. Then we talked about how the homelessness crisis is inherently bad because there is a stigma that perpetuates the idea that they cannot be helped. But this stigma is dehumanizing for an entire population. If we shift the way that we think and enforce construction and provide affordable housing for this population, we can reverse that stigma. Lastly, we explained how mandates are good. They provide the enforcement needed to make sure housing is constructed and being offered to the people that need it the most. Now, the negative has come up here and brought up some half-decent points, but none of them actually interact with the core issues here at hand. They say that this doesn't address the mental health crisis and that the issue is going to persist anyway. And they claim that affordable housing is still expensive and that it's somehow impossible to help the people that need it. But none of these statements ever actually disprove our resolution. Does affordable housing mandates improve the rates of homelessness? The answer is an astounding yes. Again, there was a whopping 88% decrease in homelessness compared to other solving methods. The methods have been proven to work. However, they ignore any other outside influences that could be contributing to the increase in the homelessness crisis. What we do know is that those methods worked. Now, for a fact, despite how hard they tried to dispute the information, again, the Housing First programs were implemented and were working, and we argue that we just don't have enough. Mandates are not as terrible as our opponents want you to believe. The system we live in just doesn't prioritize the things that people need and these mandates for the homeless. The system that our opponent is advocating for is preventing the homeless from getting the help that they need. Let me say that one more time. Our opponent is asking us to not provide affordable housing for people without a roof over their heads. And we've proved why they need it. Sure, these mandates on their own don't solve for literally every single individual homeless person that is sitting out on the street, but we have proved that these mandates will improve upon the problem. And we have proved that there are ways to fund housing that are not just successful, but are literally the key to good outcomes. Housing is the first step to a successful mental health treatment and the first step to getting people to where they need to be in a safe environment. Today, I know that this is a clear win for the affirmative, us, in this debate. The only logical answer is that by creating more affordable housing, that equals more opportunity for people to get a roof over their heads, which equals more opportunity for them to get a job, which equals more opportunity to get themselves onto their feet, and is effectively giving our best attempt at ending the homelessness crisis. The issue at hand will not be permanently solved because, again, of course there will be somebody still out on the street, but we're doing everything we can to help as many people as possible. The issues that our opponent brings up today, such as the system reinforcing the problem, is the exact issue that we are trying to address. All of these barriers are for the actual mandates themselves. The mandates alone do not reinforce harm, but the lack of mandates will. Once a homeless individual receives a home and is able to obtain a job, they will no longer need that affordable housing. From there, they can integrate themselves back into the working class society and contribute back into our own system. And is that not the whole point? Affordable housing is meant to be a stepping stone to further the individual into a contributing citizen. The negative's argument that there will be no economic outcome for affordable housing is just flat out wrong, because more citizens contributing to the United States economy will be better for everybody. And it's even better that they can do it in a stable, healthy, and safe manner. We are advocating for a way to aid the homeless in order to catapult them into the workforce and in return contribute to our communities. You should be voting for the team that best solves for homelessness, the team that has a timely and enforceable plan, and ultimately, you should be voting for the team that is trying to improve the lives of the people who need it the most. You should be voting for the affirmative. Thank you.
All right, let's give it up for all of our debaters. All right, we know that both sides did an excellent job, but I'm going to be calling on all of you to decide who you think won. Okay? So, on the applause-o-meter, which is subjective, but you know,
Scientific.
it's scientifically proven. Let's see how How much you think the affirmative has won? Let's give it up for the affirmative. Pretty long. That's pretty good. Who thinks that the negative one? Okay. Can we hear affirmative again? Negative? Okay.
He's cheating.
His vote don't
I
count.
didn't hear any wooing for affirmative, so can we just hear affirmative again? Alright. And to be fair, let's hear negative again.